There are bridges, bridges in the sky, they are shining in the sun. They are stone and steel and wood and wire, they can change two things to one. They are languages and letters, they are poetry and all. They are love and understanding, and they're other than war. They are languages and letters, they are poetry and all. They are love and understanding, and they're other than war. There are canyons, they are yawning in the night. They are rank and bitter anger, they are all devoid light. They are fear and blind suspicion, they are apathy and pride. They are dark and soul foreboding, and they're also very wide. They are fear and blind suspicion, they are apathy and pride. They are dark and soul foreboding, and they're also very wide. Let us build a bridge of music, let us cross the river song. Let us span another canyon, let us ride together on. Oh, if someone should ask us where we are and bound today, we will tell them building bridges and be off and on our way. Oh, if someone should ask us where we're off and bound today, we will tell them building bridges and be off and on our way. We will tell them building bridges and be off and on our way.
We will tell them building bridges and be off and on our way. Thank you, Bill Staines, for letting us use the Bridges song on Bridges programming. So when I say to someone, what are you doing today? And they're working with Bridges programming, they should say, I am building bridges to help save our species and the world. My name is Jeff Bella. Welcome to Bridges Programming, Wednesday World Call-In. With us is Susan Coleman and
Hello.
Dennis Carrius. Hello, Dennis. How are you?
Hey.
Hi,
Oh,
Dennis.
good, Jeff. Hi, Susan.
And we are here in sunny Florida right now, and we're talking to Dennis in sunny New York. We are here again, and if you look on your screen, you'll notice that this is brought to you by the Human Renewable Energy Measure, and that's the HREM.org, the Human Renewable Energy Measure. Also by Renew the Earth, which is a non-profit organization that promotes good things and renewable energy. And we talk about things around the world, projects and things you can do with your kids and grandchildren, little projects that Susan writes every month, a new newsletter that has in it
For children.
and
their parents.
to work together. So that's the Human Renewable Energy Measure is the one thing, and Renew the Earth, and that you can donate to that if you choose. We're not asking though for money for us or for even to help run the programming. We are saying to you that to do any, if we're going to give you what you need to do to make this happen, the positive thing you can do to change the world is really simple. It's not like picking up a gun or joining an organization or even giving money. It's not by electing somebody. It's about just simply saying all humanity has to have their basic needs met, which we can all agree upon. Their education, food, and shelter for a minimal amount of their life work. So everybody alive today has their basic needs met unless they're dying. And then that they're working too hard. And there's so much technology out there and so many natural resources that no one should have to work more than an hour for their basic needs met. Their wants are totally different. If you want to work another 23 more hours a day for wants, have 10, 12, 15 cars, 100 houses, rule the world, or whatever you think you want to do with that money, or that time you're converting to money, your lifetime, you can do that. But you're not hurting anybody because all basic needs are met, and we agree upon the measurement on a social understanding that a social agreement that we all have to make sure all humanity has their basic needs met for a minimal amount of life work a day. And that's about an hour, according to people that we've dealt with and spoke with over the years. We also have to believe that all humanity has to have all the education they can possibly accept or want. And it shouldn't be thrust upon them, but they should have the ability to get all the education they want, not because to make money with it, but for their own curiosity's sake, to help the rest of the planet and the species. And as Dennis said before the program started, he's here to save the planet, but he actually means he's here to save the species. And if we destroy the planet, we're going to kill the species. But you can't destroy the planet, you're just going to kill the air, water, and soil. And if you do that, you wipe out our life supports, and we don't want to do that. So that's the point. It's not a question of saving the planet. It's a question of, I think, saving the natural resources to help humanity, and therefore we also help the species. And I'm going to quote Dennis again because he has good quotes. He's saying we should just print a lot of money up and use it to put on the rooftops and give that paper money and make something physical out of it and get energy from the sun, and therefore we don't need to have oil, and therefore we can probably stop the dictators and the rest of the world from trying to make more paper money that they put in the bank and control, or try to control the world with. Like, we have a Republican, very wealthy person who's really buying the media and preying on people's fears and hatreds, and he's using his money to do that. And unfortunately, that's not a good idea, in my opinion. That we should be working together and not build walls. We need to build bridges and come together. And I think that's a much better way of dealing with this. What do you think, Dennis? You think that's right or wrong?
Right with a capital R.
Isn't that a W? No, it's an R.
No, that's only if I write. If I write this, it would be with a W, but it's correct. So I'd say right with a capital R.
Okay. And
for emphasis.
And you can write that out with a capital R with a capital W. Okay, now Susan's got something that we thought about.
I wanted to actually bring you to a conversation that you had before we started the program. You were talking with Dennis about how it's just counterproductive for us to keep dividing people against each other and making groups out of people, like, them and us, and these kind of things create distrust. And you were talking about that, remember?
Right. When you mentioned,
it was very interesting.
Dennis, you have a tendency of mentioning the 1% of the world population, those people. And they have a tendency of looking at a poor population as those people, and less educated people as those people, them and us. And that's a very, very big problem. Because if we divide the population like that, we now have an enemy, a boogeyman, someone who we have to fight. And I don't believe in that. I think humanity has to come together. So there isn't those. And then, of course, when someone makes up that number, let's say the 1%ers or the 0.1%ers that are controlling the world, or the cabal, or those people, the Germans, the Russians, the Jews, the Hispanics, the Muslims. Once you start dividing the population up, and then you have an enemy. Well, I don't think that we should have enemies, and I don't think we have to have enemies. I think what makes the enemies is the economic system. I don't believe any human being wants to hurt another human being, and I don't believe that any Bible ever basically says you have to love thy neighbor, no matter which Bible it is. But the economic system intentionally creates, and it's been doing this for the last, I'd say 5,000 years before the Roman Empire, to make sure, go fight for the king. God bless the king. Go, get those, Genghis Khan, and it just goes back forever about fighting people. But it wasn't fighting for the king or for the greatness. It was to fight to conquer lands, to get slaves and to get land and money. But wasn't called money. It might have been back then called gold or shekels, but it was power, and it was power, and they controlled the population through the economic system, and that's a big thing. And if people realize that all these wars, all of this is about the economic system, really has nothing to do with religion. It's all about bridging. So we need to fix the problem. We need to come up with a measure. For the first time in history, we can now measure that all humanity has to have about 1 million calories of food a year, and that comes from the sun. Without those calories, we will die. We need 1 million calories from the sun, of water through evaporation, from salt to fresh water. And then that's what we need to live. We need fresh water. We can't drink salt water, but the sun does that for us. It's all gifts of nature. If you want to be religious about it, gifts of God. We all live about 80 years of age. Some live a lot longer and some live a lot shorter. But on the average, 80 years is a good number. Now.
But you see, we're seeing a presidential contest formulating at this time in the United States that tries to make groups suspicious or afraid of each other, and dividing people, and making well, you see where I'm going.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
We have one candidate who, is actually playing to prejudices that people may have, lingering in the back of their minds, because, throughout the ages, there have been many, many prejudices that have formulated between religions and races, and for good reasons, because people are killed in wars, and people are made refugees, and people are excluded from various ways of making a living, or living in places where they would like to live. All these things, can keep in the human collective mind, you might want to call it, various little inklings that, maybe it has something to do with them, or maybe my problems have something to do with that this person or these people are around. And we have a candidate right now who is playing to these kind of little whispers, and that are not the main thrust of our human existence as far as our humanity, but they are little whispers, as I would put them, that like little devils that whisper in people's minds. And Rush Limbaugh has got, people make livings on speaking to these kind of things, and whipping them up so that people think, oh yeah, that must be why I am suffering, or that must be why I can't get a job, or
that's what Hitler
that must
did.
Be why.
That's what Hitler did.
Yes, and people, it's a way of kind of exercising these things, but it also can, once a person has this in their conscious mind and they really are convinced, beyond a doubt that some group or some religion or some race is
responsible.
Is responsible for their misery. And they come to that conclusion, then you have a very dangerous situation.
Well, it's like the 1%ers. It's like we're blaming the 1%ers.
No, I don't. We don't.
No, we don't. But I'm just saying that the general consensus through a large population is that they're blaming the oligarchies and they may be right, but that's not not going to solve anything.
That's a very human thing to try to split a large picture into manageable pieces.
Well, they blame
and
psychopathic people. They blame psychopathic behavior.
We do that
so
naturally.
The way to get rid of the psychopathic behavior is to get rid of psychopaths, which in turn makes you a psychopath. My point is that we need to understand that all humanity Everybody has a place on this earth. I would play a song for you, all God's creatures has a place in the choir, but all humanity, we have to deal with humanity as it stands, and we have to accept it. We just have to not allow it to hurt another human being, and that's where the HRM comes in. We just have to we can't divide ourselves and say those 1%ers or those 1.1%ers or those or the corporations. They may be doing damage, but they're doing damage because of the economic system. But what I can,
what's so important about this is to keep the whole picture in mind,
right?
Not to be isolating groups or businesses or entities that have human momentum to be the end all and be all of the cause of your misery or your discontent or your lack of getting what you feel your life should be like. These are ways that people control other people. They are not. This is a way groups of people are controlled by individuals or small groups of people. They by demonizing and separating us from each other, we can't come together to have reasonable conclusions about directions that humanity should go to preserve its species on Earth. I think it's very interesting. I'd like to kind of go from this point to another one that I've been thinking about. We've heard yesterday that geologists are continuing to debate whether or not to call to propose that we're in a new epoch. Epochs are a big deal for geologists to there's vastly long. I'm not even going to guess how long. Millions of years probably. But in this case, they're saying that we're leaving the Holocene epoch. I mean, a lot of geologists are saying this now, and that we're entering what they would like to call an Anthropocene epoch. And of course, all these words have Greek roots, Greek language roots, and anthropo is Greek for human, and scene is meaning new. And so this is new human epoch, the time of humans. And the reason that they are proposing this is because we have been having, as a human species, such an incredible impact on our planet, on the biodiversity and the geology, the biomes of this planet, since our beginnings. In fact, there was a geologist back in the 1500s who proposed, and his name, the 1873, and he proposed, this is Antonio Stoppani, I wrote down a note here, that this effect was occurring, and that he was talking in 1873, and he referred to as he made a name for it that was Anthropozoic era. And then now geologists are saying that this impact that we have starts as far back as the 1500s. And of course, in the 19th century now, it is accelerating greatly. I'll read you a little bit about, from Wikipedia here. Human impact on biodiversity forms one of the primary attributes of Anthropocene, or the Anthropocene era. Humankind has entered what is sometimes called the Earth's sixth major extinction. Most experts agree that human activities have accelerated the rate of species extinction. The exact rate remains controversial, perhaps 100 to 1,000 times the normal background rate of extinction. When they say background rate, they mean they had before us a rate that they were graphing as to, how many extinctions would happen in what amount of time, and this has changed dramatically since we've been around as a species. A 2010 study published in Nature found that marine phytoplankton, the vast range of algae species, account for roughly half of Earth's total photosynthetic biomass, have declined substantially in the world's oceans over the past century. And if you know about how important phytoplankton is to the health of the oceans, which are 80% of our Earth's mass and living creatures, you know that that's a profound problem.
Well, you wouldn't know that unless you studied it. But
Yeah.
The average person doesn't know that.
But it is something to educate yourself about. Anyways, and coral reefs, of course, are involved. Coral reefs are essential to the health of the oceans, the marine. Anyways,
and when they die, by the way, there's a chain reaction. It might take 50 years, and it's happening. Well, it happened a long time ago. As a matter of fact, there was a movie called On Deadly Earth, On Deadly Ground by Steven Seagal. Warner Brothers put it out. And if you look at our website, you will see the tail end of that movie where Steven Seagal does a story, a little talk, and he's saying that the plankton has disappeared and is dying all around the world, and he does a beautiful job in that speech.
Makes the point that we're trying to make today.
But that was a 15-year-old movie.
Yeah, and actually this notion of the Anthropocene newly proposed epoch has been around for at least 10 years or more. Well, actually, obviously, since 1873, this guy.
The 1900s, so it's been 70 years.
Yeah, right. So, but now it's being discussed with more intensity. There's going to be like a vote about it in our present 2016, and probably it will be confirmed. And one thing that we all hear about a lot now is how climate is being influenced by human activities. And here we go on to talk about in Wikipedia now. You can get other sources. I just happened to pull this one up. Quote, one geological symptom resulting from human activity is increased atmospheric carbon dioxide, CO2 content. During the interglacial cycles of the past million years, natural processes have varied CO2 by approximately 100 parts per million. As of 2013, anthropogenic net emissions, in other words, human-influenced emissions of CO2, have increased its atmospheric concentration by a comparable amount of 280 parts per million. They go on to say to approximately 397 parts per million. This signal in the Earth's climate system is especially significant because it is occurring much faster and to an enormously greater extent than previous similar changes. Most of this increase is due to the combustion of fossil fuels, such as coal, oil, gas. Altogether, fractions are the result of, although smaller fractions are the result of cement production and land use changes like deforestation, but the main contributors are the burning of coal, oil, and gas. And of course, we all depend on this for our energy,
for our economic system to function.
And for our economic system.
But I want to explain why it's those three things mainly. And that's because when you burn carbon, when you burn coal, you're burning carbon, which is a compressed carbohydrate, and it lets more CO2 into the atmosphere.
And other chemicals
and the whole thing, and also that holds true for
minerals.
Oil and gas. When you take something that's been compressed out of the ground, you're
releasing a lot more elements, a lot more particles.
Like when you cook or you burn wood, it's a you're burning a carbohydrate,
which is not a compressed
as compressed, so it doesn't put as much carbon in. but you're still putting carbon into the atmosphere. That's why an extractive fuel, be it coal or oil or gases, once it's compressed, and that it's more carbon putting into the atmosphere. Now, natural gas doesn't put carbon into the atmosphere, but it's a byproduct of something else. So it's
that has already been
right.
releasing. I mean, because in order to get natural gas, you have to dig down and come into the areas where you're finding fossil fuels.
Fossil fuel gas.
And
right. So I mean, this is all part
so,
of. So I mean,
it's just a byproduct essentially
it's
of
not
other
complicated,
processes.
but what happens is the mainstream media and the people who control the mainstream media are making it more complicated than it is. A matter of fact, if you just try to just step back a minute and say, what do we all need? We all need education, food, and shelter. That's what we all need. That's all, physically, that's all we need. Education, food, and shelter. Mainly education to know which food and shelter to have. It's that simple. And no human being should have to slave for making a living to get their food and shelter. So I'm suggesting that it's simple. Just let's get a measurement like gravity or like whatever thing we came up with, the world's flat. We finally came up with answers that we agreed upon, an agreement that all humanity has to have their basic needs met for a minimal amount of their life work, which is about an hour with today's natural resources and technology. And we changed the whole system. Wants are different. That makes us human. We all have different wants. Only the nose knows what the beak seeks, is the expression that I sort of like. But my point is, we need to understand, come to a social agreement that all basic needs will be met for a minimal amount of life work. And we all have to make sure we all put, every human being has the right to all the education we can possibly gain, all of us. Some of us will want to become physicists. Some of us want to become ditch diggers or mechanics. We need all humanity to work together, and all people have the same value as a species, as an individual, as the person who's better or less educated. But you must allow the education to flow, not because of money, because of benefiting humanity. And once we benefit humanity, we can also stop polluting our planet that are going to kill us in the long run. It's like going to the doctor and having a better, and they say, listen, we learned a little bit about this diet. Maybe you shouldn't be eating this kind of foods, and maybe you should not be doing sugars, you maybe not. We are learning these things as a species. But right now we're a pretty stupid species because
I think we're overwhelmed by so much going on at once. Yes, and it's hard for us to take it all in.
We think that we're a lot smarter than we are. We're a pretty stupid species. No matter how well educated you think you are, whereas as a species, we're pretty damn stupid. And we need to realize that.
We have the capacity.
We have the ability to learn more. But we have to keep an open mind.
Fill in the holes in our education.
Right, exactly.
It's interesting. I was reading forward in this while Jeff was talking, but we are actually creating our own, what they refer to as techno-fossils, with our activities on this planet, and because we have artifacts now, because we've been around for so long, litter and debris and everything have carried by rivers and deposited along coastlines are gathering in sedimentary ways and trapping our activities as fossils. Very interesting to me. I'm sure to other people too. I wanted to also give some idea of how long and epic I came to this already in the reading. The one that we're in now has gone on for about 10,000 years to the present, and it's referred to as the Holocene because for the majority of it, human populations were relatively low and their impact was not that great. But a lot of people are saying that this new era should begin maybe approximately 8,000 years ago with the development of, quote, farming and sedentary cultures. At this point, humans were dispersed across all the continents except Antarctica and the Neolithic Revolution was ongoing. Now, I guess you'll have to look up what the Neolithic Revolution is. I'm not going to go to that. During this period, humans developed agriculture and animal husbandry. We're talking about when they believed that this new Anthropocene era should begin. Agriculture, animal husbandry to supplement or replace hunter-gatherer subsistence. Such innovations followed by a wave of extinctions, beginning with large mammals and land birds. This wave was driven both the direct activities of humans, by the direct activity of humans hunting, and the indirect consequences of land use changes or agriculture. And you put on top of that then the Industrial Revolution, and all this gets accelerated greatly because we start to draw out the fossil fuels and use them to propel our industries. And that's where we are now, essentially, just at another level of that.
And at this point in time,
a higher use of that.
I'd like to play a piece of music by Pat Humphries called Swimming to the Other Side. And it's about a 5-minute piece. So please listen to that. Dennis, do you ever hear that song, Swimming to the Other Side by Pat Humphries?
Yes, I like that song.
Okay, we're going to play a few. We're taking a little break. We'll be back in about 4 or 5 minutes.
We are living in the great big dipper. We are washed by the very same rain. We are swimming in the stream together, some in power, some in pain. We can worship this ground we walk on, cherishing the beings that we live beside. Loving spirits will live forever. We're all swimming to the other side. I am alone, I am searching, hungering for answers in my time. I am balanced at the brink of wisdom. I'm impatient to receive a sign. I move forward with my senses open. Imperfection would be my crime. In humility I will listen. We're all swimming to the other side. We are living in the great big dipper. We are washed by the very same rain. We are swimming in the stream together, some in power, some in pain. We can worship this ground we walk on, cherishing the beings that we live beside. Loving spirits will live forever. We're all swimming to the other side. On this journey through thoughts and feelings, finding intuition, my head, my heart, I am gathering the tools together. I'm preparing to do my part. All of those who have come before me, band together and be my guide. Loving lessons that I will follow. We're all swimming to the other side. We are living beneath the great big dipper. We are washed by the very same rain. We are swimming in the stream together, some in power and some in pain. We can worship this ground we walk on, cherishing the beings that we live beside. Loving spirits will live forever. We're all swimming to the other side. When we get there, we'll discover all of the gifts we've been given to share have been with us since life's beginning, and we never noticed they were there. We can balance at the brink of wisdom, never recognizing that we've arrived. Loving spirits will live together. We're all swimming to the other side. We are living beneath the great big dipper. We are washed by the very same rain. We are swimming in the stream together, some in power, some in pain. We can worship this ground we walk on, cherishing the beings that we live beside. Loving spirits will live forever. We're all swimming to the other side. Loving spirits will live forever. We're all swimming to the other side.
Thank you, Pat Humphreys. That's great.
I would like to continue with just for a little longer with this
Sure,
line of
please
thought
go
that
ahead.
I was before the music, and yeah, Pat Humphreys, what a beautiful song. It seems like the only thing that geologists are trying to figure out now is when this era began, and it's this kind of thing. I mean, as large, like it could be as long as 10,000 years, maybe more. These epochs that are named by geologists. These are another way that we, as a species, we're all part of forming this. We are having a human impact on the earth, and geologists are now going to come to some conclusion about when it began, and they want to name it. They want to name it
If they don't name it, they can't measure it.
Human era. Yeah, well, that's another aspect, and you can talk to that after I finish. What the point I was going to make here. We already discussed how some people would like it to start when agricultural activities began. People became more sedentary. There was animal husbandry. There's another proposal, and this is what geologists are debating. Maybe they want it to be 2,000 years ago. This would be, quote, the Roman Empire encompassed large parts of Europe, etc. In China, the classical dynasties were flowering, Middle India, etc. And the Napata Meroitic kingdom extended over the current Sudan and Ethiopia. Lots of huge, and in South America, huge civilizations in Guatemala, Mexico, Peru. They were saying that these impacted areas with these large civilizations, that's when this era should begin. Then there's also people who say, no, let's wait till the Industrial Revolution began. And that should be when we should say this impact of human species began. But before that, it says here, much of, quote, Earth's landscape had already been profoundly modified by human activities. Now, here's the final possibility in this list, and this is the one actually that I get behind. And I would say this marker, and they call it an Anthropocene marker. They want to know when this all began, our profound impact on the earth. And this final marker, and this is the soil. The soil, how has the evolution of our soil, and there's a word for that, which is pedogenesis, meaning that which we walk upon. Another Greek word, pedo, meaning the surface we walk upon, the soil. Genesis, the beginning, how it's evolving, how it's okay. And it's here, quote, a useful candidate for an Anthropocene marker is the pedosphere, meaning all the soil, which can retain information of its climatic and geochemical history with features lasting for centuries and millennia. Human activity is now firmly established as the sixth factor of soil formation. We have created, as a human species, a factor in soil formation, and here's how it works. Quote, it affects pedogenesis either directly by, for example, land leveling, trenching, and embankment building for various purposes, organic matter enrichment from additions of manure or other waste, organic matter impoverishment due to continued cultivation, compaction from overgrazing, or indirectly by drift of eroded materials or pollutants. Anthropogenic soils are those markedly affected by human activities such as repeated plowing, the addition of fertilizers, contamination, sealing, or entrenchment, enrichment with artifacts. And the World Reference Base for Soil Resources is a source for this kind of information. These soils are recalcitrant repositories of artifacts and properties that testify to the dominance of the human impact and hence appear to be reliable markers for the Anthropocene. Some anthropogenic soils should be hence viewed as the golden spikes of geologists, which are locations where there are strata successions with clear evidence of a worldwide event, including the appearance of distinctive fossils. And these golden spikes could be things like when we felt that the dinosaurs were made extinct through an impact from a comet hitting the Earth, volcanic activity that transformed our Earth in the past geological time. You know, we are now, as a species, creating such a golden spike.
Well, when they say the word golden spike, what the meaning is a spot that you can see very
in
clearly.
The strata
right. It doesn't,
of
the word golden spike is sort of
Earth sediment.
ridiculous. A spot, a dot,
right,
a main form, a period, a dot, a place that we can actually say this is where it started.
It's so profoundly different that it is very clear to geologists. Well, that's what they call it.
But that's they mean a dot, a clearly defined spot.
Yeah. So anyways, I just wanted to give you some overall. It's a very interesting subject. This is being decided now in 2016. At what point they're going to claim that this era of Anthropocene, the human time, the human era, the new human impact on the Earth began, and define its impacts. This will be very, very useful, I think, in helping people understand
what's going on in
change,
climate now.
And it will
help. Now, the reason for this. Now, Dennis, I want to ask you a question. You ready?
Dennis is ready. Yes.
Okay. Why do you think? I know you're going to say it's interesting. What did you think Susan was talking about?
Well, just that we are not very smart on this planet. It's like the three of us are like three fish floating in the ocean, saying we're the only fish in this ocean, and you know, we don't really know. When we invented the automobile, we didn't know what comes out of that exhaust pipe is doing what we're talking about, you know, with climate change and you know, carbon dioxide and all that. So I really think that we could be very smart as we move on and learn, but in the past we really didn't know how to, you know.
In other words, right now, what you're saying right now is we have the burden of truth, and we should do something about the burden of truth. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, but can Dennis say something? Because Big Oil says we'll have solar if they can put a meter on the sun, which means that some of this has to do with that word greed.
Okay, I don't want to go into I don't want to go into that word now because we're gonna that takes into a cul-de-sac. But I want to bring out what Susan was talking about, that the reason why they want to come up with a point of reference they call it the silver spike, the golden spike, a point of reference to know where we started
At what
from.
point in historic
And
time?
that's exactly what the HRM does.
Geological time.
The HRM gives you a measurement to say, here's where we are now to help human beings. All human beings we must agree on this point, this golden spike. We must agree as a social being where this point is started from, so we can continue to measure it or agree to where it started from. That's why this big conference is about a point of agreement. Well, that's what we need in our economic system, a point of agreement to what all humanity has to have to stay alive. We need a point of agreement. We need to come together, a social understanding that all human beings must have their basic needs met for a minimal amount of time. And we have to name it, like they use those fancy words.
This is an economic social
This
agreement.
is an economic, and we're naming it.
And it's a large system, our economics, but an even larger system is the geology, how the geology is being, our planet is being affected by our human presence. And this is why when we began this conversation, we were talking about how we're being asked to divide ourselves into smaller and smaller groups, and in a way against each other. But this is why we have to now propose that we are all impacting the earth just as a species in a profound way.
For whatever reason.
And this is a much more important thing for us to focus on, our commonality and our common impact on this planet, not our differences. At this point, it's very dangerous to be focusing, I believe, on differences, especially when people who are bringing them up are self-serving and trying to divide people, to control them. We are a species together. We are having a profound impact on our planet.
For whatever reason.
Well, it isn't even a matter of that. We are having a profound impact on our planet because we want to survive as a species. And this is the way we have found to do it.
The way we divide the thing up is we say the 1% is the greedy people. We keep on doing that.
But those are games that power brokers are playing.
Right.
They're not the core of the subject.
Right. The subject is we need to come together. We can't blame the psychopaths, the greedy people, the Jews, the Christians,
the corporations,
the politicians.
They're
all part of the economic system.
Right.
So without blame, let's figure out what's wrong. And I'm suggesting what's simply wrong with the system.
An even larger impact that we're having that has nothing to do with all these little power games.
Right.
We're having an impact on our planet that can destroy everything that we're building.
Because of the physics of what we are neglecting. Right. We need to come to physically a problem. If we're going to change the face of the planet, if we're going to destroy the
what
oil,
is our purpose?
The water, the coal, the water, the land, and the soil, the water, the soil, and the air, then we have to figure out why. And if we're using fossil fuel or we're using something that theoretically is enhancing our ability to live.
What is causing us to use everything up, to use things up instead of do what we know how to do, which is to use things carefully and replace them.
Right. And I hate to use the word sustainably, but
unfortunately, that's the only word we have.
So that's
right now. We could invent new words. If we get behind ideas like this, there will be new words.
And here's how we could do this. You don't need to change the world as far as your political system. You don't need to change the way you even live. You don't need to do you don't have to join a group or put money in. All you have to do is understand that all human beings physically have to have their basic needs met for a minimal amount of time without hurting one another and without hurting the air, the water, and the soil. Once we agree upon that social agreement we're calling the HRM, what you could do about that is not take out a gun. People think I'm carrying a sidearm. I'm not. We don't take out a gun. Don't go ahead and scream and yell at people. Just discuss the fact that we need a measurement based on energy units, so all human beings have their basic needs met for the education, food, and shelter. And we're going to name it. We're going to call it the HREM, the Human Renewable Energy Measure.
And what this
and
is.
what you need to do this is you don't give money again. Don't do anything but just talk about this at your church groups, your bar, your dinner table. Make people start to think about a new measurement, put into the vocabulary. If we can use your listservs to do it. You got a listserv, get it out there. Use whatever you can. That's what you can do physically to make sure something physically happens to help you as a person and as a species. And we stop. And once we put that measurement into position, we have stopped poisoning our air, our water, and our soil. And we can get rid of the word greed. We can get rid of minimum wage because everyone's taken care of. Get rid of welfare because everyone's taken care of. Those words are gone because we have the measurement now that we all agree upon. Education is wide open for everyone, and shelter is there for all humanity if they choose to have it. So basic needs are met. That's all we have to think about.
What we're talking about is a new economic social agreement. And this measurement that Jeff is describing within our economics, it will confirm and preserve our commonality, which we started talking about at the very beginning. We need to emphasize our commonality, our needs, food, shelter, and education. This is an agreement that needs to be preserved and protected within our social economic systems. Right now, our economics is forces our industries to use things up. It is an imperative to make profit, and wherever profit can be made, those resources, those that area, that workforce that will work for nothing is used up. And that's why we have so many extinctions. That's why our land is being transformed.
That's why we're killing people all over the world.
These are symptoms of an economics that is profit oriented. We need a new economic social agreement that measures what we truly need and confirms and preserves our commonality because of those needs. I did write a little, because you were thinking about something, because this comes also to the fossil fuels and stuff. Right now, we're hearing a lot of talk about fuel prices in the news, and they're dropping and whatever. And people are wondering, well, why the heck aren't we doing better if fuel prices are dropping? And you were saying, Jeff, that none of it really means anything because we have no way to measure what's happening.
Look, for every dollar, now I'm going to go back to currency for a minute. For every dollar we spend, we lose $14. Conversely, if we keep the dollar in our community locally, don't take it out of the community, it circulates 14 times. So if you look at the cost of fuel when it goes up $1, we lose $14 out of our community. If you're made locally produced, like you would talk about solar and save $1, you generate $14. The question now is, why isn't it happening?
Yeah.
The fuel prices are way down. We're not getting gains. It's not coming back.
It's not trickling into the rest of the population.
The system is sucking. It's still sucking us dry. They kept the same numbers to give the wealthy people even more stuff. And that's the way our economic system works.
That's
nothing wrong with that. That's the way our system works.
There are things wrong with it.
There's something wrong with it.
It is not a good way to run economics.
There's something wrong with the system morally because there's no measurement. But there's nothing wrong with it because there's no measurement for what someone has to put back into the system.
Well, I think there is something wrong with it.
It's morally wrong.
Yes, it is morally wrong. And people do have a decision whether to behave in an amoral or immoral way.
But there's no measurement for that. So you can't possibly say how much should I put back? Because there's no way of saying.
Right now, that decision is being made about, how well do I want to live, and can I force this into a situation? How much do I want to
need a basic measurement.
Harm other people in the environment to get what I need?
Without the measurement, you have no way of determining that.
Okay, because there's no measure that focuses on
right.
What matters most.
We have measurements with stock markets. I have measurements on the NASDAQ and all the other, but the measurements are bogus. They have all kinds of formulas, but they're bogus. They're not real because there's no way of determining what a dollar is worth, and it has to be based on physical things like the amount of food you need in energy units, the amount of water you need in energy units. It's all based on what we have to have physically and within a matter of so many hours a day of your life work.
What Buckminster Fuller would say about this, about the fuel prices, is there's no way to measure the value of that fuel in terms of what he called livingry.
Right.
What we need to live, there's nothing there that gives us some kind of rule of thumb or measure that could guide us in how much of all of this extra profit, all this extra value should go toward livingry,
helping humanity.
You cannot control that because there's nothing there to control it with.
There's no way to measure it.
So this absence of a measure of this kind of measure in economics allows prices and value for goods to be hijacked, by banks and corporations and people who have collected.
And you would say the greedy people get it.
And because they're just operating within the present system with great efficiency and maybe an amoral or immoral, or however you want to define it, sense of
they're very moral because they're working with the
humanity.
System without a measurement.
But by working the system so well doesn't mean that they are in some way more admirable. They just are working a system, just like a gambler can do in Las Vegas.
No, this is much worse than that.
Oh, and it's worse.
Okay, well, anyway, I want to thank you all for listening. Again, please talk to your friends about the human renewable energy measure. Get that message out there. That's what you could do. That's the most important thing you do. Get in the language, the HRM in the language, and get your pastors to talk about it. Dennis, thank you for being here. Susan, thank you for being here. Thank you all for listening. And we'll see you as soon as we possibly can. Again, thank you very much. This has been World Call In on Bridges Programming, sponsored by the HRM.
Somewhere across the sea, and suddenly the price of oil goes up. Your neighbor's out of work because they closed the factory. You try to stretch your paycheck, but it's never quite enough for energy. It all comes down to energy. You wonder where the money's gone. Here's some fuel for thought. It all comes down to energy. Fossil fuel affects our lives like ripples on a lake. Cars and farms and factories and trucks. Supplies go down, prices soar, our futures are at stake. And when it's gone, it won't come back, and we'll be out of luck. Oh, energy. It all comes down to energy. You wonder where the money's gone. Well, here's some fuel for thought. It all comes down to energy. We can get our energy from corn and grass and trees. Even trash converts to biofuels. Break loose from the stranglehold of oil companies. Renewables can fuel the world. We're here to spread the news. Oh, energy. It all comes down to energy. You wonder where the money's gone. Well, here's some fuel for thought. It all comes down to energy.